This video was inspired by a lot of comments I've gotten, especially on my more recent Cybertruck news, and I try to be as realistic as possible with my expectations and predictions, and I base a lot of those on how Tesla has behaved in the past, specifically given the influx of EV demand and how they're handling it. And a lot of people disagree with my expectations about how the price is going to be much worse than they thought, and the range is probably not going to be as good as you think, because as we've seen, when Tesla is presented with an overwhelming amount of demand, they will compromise on vehicle specs in order to prioritize production efficiency. So when they first unveiled the Plaid Model S, they thought they were going to use 4680 batteries in it and get it at over 520 miles of range, but they realized how much longer and how much slower the production ramp was going to be for them to use 4680 batteries, so they realized that we can bring this vehicle to market sooner and we can ramp production a lot faster if we just continue to use the 1865 cells we've been using in the Model S for a long time. That resulted in the range being closer to 350 miles, and Elon's response was, well, that's good enough for most people. And I know that's upsetting. Many of you absolutely need more range. I understand that. I'm not trying to deny the use case of having more range, but I can also advocate and totally understand that not everybody needs that much range. There's a segment of the market who does, but there's a very large and very present obvious market for pickup trucks that doesn't necessarily need 400 or 500 miles of range. And when you're first ramping up production of a vehicle, you're going to prioritize a wider range of customers that you can deliver a product to quickly. And just like how we thought the 4680 Model Y was going to have this absurdly long range, way longer than the 2170 option, turns out Tesla decided to compromise with a lower energy dense pack, and they made a 279 mile range Model Y. Not particularly good compared to the long range and performance options, but they chose this because it will help with margins and affordability, as well as helping ramp up production faster, because clearly they have way too much demand for the long range option as is, so there's not really much incentive or purpose to making the range even higher, because then the demand is just going to be absurdly higher and you'll probably not be able to ramp production as quickly. So that's where my predictions come in, that based on the fact that Rivian has plenty of demand for their 300 mile range truck, Ford has plenty of demand for their 200 and 300 mile range pickup, I think Tesla will comfortably sell a 300 or so mile range Cybertruck that's close to $100,000 or in that ballpark. And every time I say that, I see a lot of comments that say people are going to cancel their orders. The whole reason I reserved is for 500 miles of range. I do it for towing, and a lot of people that are convinced the Cybertruck is only popular, only reason people are interested in it is because of that high range and because of that low price. So personally, I don't believe that to be true. I think that a lot of people bought into it. Yes, the range and price was a deciding factor, but also because they want the software, they want the technology, and they like the exoskeleton. The durability aspect of this vehicle, not to mention insane Tesla acceleration, not to mention the Cybertruck has a larger bed than any of these other electric trucks on the market, not to mention it can access the largest charging network out of all of these other trucks. And some people just like the futuristic, post-apocalyptic approach. It feels timeless, it feels iconic, and I'm definitely in that camp of just thinking that if I could choose any pickup truck for myself, the fact that this does not need any branding or any logos and yet you know exactly what it is says a lot about how iconic and recognizable the design is. And I think there's beauty in that, and knowing how durable that exterior is compared to pretty much any other truck on the road makes it feel like you're driving a tank, and I think a lot of truck owners like that and would invest in it. Now, I'm not trying to say every pickup truck buyer will prefer the Cybertruck over an F-150 or a Rivian. Clearly, a lot of people want Rivians, and I'm happy that more and more are driving around. And yes, even tens of thousands of people want the electric Hummer, as ridiculous as I think that is, and the F-150 has been the most popular vehicle in the US for decades, so of course, there's demand for all these things. And I think if you're convinced that only one or two of these trucks will sell, and one of these trucks is going to be left with no buyers or no interest or no demand, you clearly don't understand the EV market as a whole. With rising gas prices and the insane inefficiency of gas pickup trucks, that's why there's tremendous demand for electric pickups, because the gas savings is astronomically higher, and already Tesla, VW, Ford, GM, they can't keep up with the demand for EVs with regular commuter vehicles, with many of them selling out and back-ordered when it comes to crossovers and SUVs, and we've been building these for a while. The Nissan Leaf has been on the market for over 10 years. Electric pickup trucks have not even been on the market for 1 year, and yet pickups are an incredibly popular segment here in the United States. So pretty much anything anything that's electric that has a bed in the back, doesn't matter if it's 100 grand and has 200 miles of range, there's gonna be people who are willing to buy it. There has been no shortage of demand, but whenever I talk about my expectations with the Cybertruck, I'm met with comments every single time that, well, no one's gonna buy it because it's not a customizable bed, or the sails on the back make it hard to reach into the bed, therefore no one will buy the truck. Tesla's gonna struggle to sell them. Again, I don't think that's going to happen, but I'll humor you guys for a minute. Let's entertain the idea. What would happen if Tesla came forward and said, okay, it's a 300-mile range truck and it's 100 grand. Everyone cancels their orders, right? 100%. Nobody's interested in this thing, and Tesla starts building them. Do you really think Tesla's the kind of company to just let vehicles sit around on their factory lots? Just for the record, they've never been comfortable with that. Even before this huge influx in demand we've had over the past year or so, back when you could order a Tesla and get it in 1 to 2 weeks, they constantly adjusted pricing and the configurator to ensure that every vehicle that came off the assembly line had a buyer lined up and ready. And if there wasn't orders coming in for a particular vehicle, they scrapped it from the website. They got rid of it very quickly, or they lowered the price until someone was interested in buying it. And that was at a time where Tesla was not profitable. Back in the 2017 and 2016 era, Tesla had a lot more debt and a lot less cash in the bank than they do now, and they were very comfortable selling Model S's, X's, and even Model 3s at a tremendous loss. They were not profiting on every single vehicle, and even after EV credits that they would sell to Legacy Auto, they were still burning through cash year after year. And it's easy to forget that now because Tesla is such a big company and they're so profitable and they have so little debt that a lot of people seem to think that, oh, Tesla only cares about profitability, where in reality, there's evidence with their history that Tesla was comfortable burning through cash and not being profitable as long as they were staying true to their mission statement of accelerating the world to more sustainable energy. I mean, no, they didn't want to burn cash forever, obviously. They were going to make the manufacturing changes they needed, and they were going to change their pricing structure so that they could become profitable, because it's kind of hard to transition to sustainable energy if your company's bankrupt. But my point is, if the Cybertruck did have a demand problem and people stopped ordering them, Tesla, especially now more than ever, would be very comfortable lowering prices or changing the manufacturing approach in order to make it affordable, in order to make it obtainable to more and more people, so that there wouldn't be giant fleets of Cybertrucks sitting around the Giga Texas parking lots waiting for buyers because, oh no, no one wants to buy these things. The F-150 Lightning, it's just too good a deal. We can't keep up, so I guess we'll just store them on our factory lot. I guess they'll just sit there. That's never been Tesla's approach. The reason prices are so high is because they can get away with it, and there's so much demand for the Model S and X and the 3 and Y, and the backlog continues to grow, and the prices continue to grow. So the concept that there would be any kind of Tesla vehicle, whether it's a Cybertruck, a Model X or S or anything, that would not sell simply because it's $100,000, again, I don't think you grasp the market very much. People are spending 100 grand right now on the Model S, and that has a year-long backlog, and you're trying to tell me that if Cybertrucks are 100 grand with a little over 300 miles of range, not to mention far more durable and far better suspension, that a Model S far more practical, you know, with the tow hitch capabilities and higher seating options and the payload capacity, you're telling me that if you could buy those and get them within a week, there won't be a market for it? I think those people making these comments clearly don't have a good grasp on how this market works. And the reason I think Tesla will be comfortable charging so much is because there's going to be so much limited supply. You should not look at the Model S and X or the Model 3 and Y production ramp as an indicator as to how quickly the Cybertruck will ramp, because very likely, even if they just want it to go a little over 300 miles, it's going to require about twice as many 4680 batteries as the standard range Model Y they're already building. They haven't even updated the configurator so that you can buy a 4680 Model Y yet, because supplies are so limited and the production ramp has to take its time to iron out the kinks, which means that for every 2 standard range Model Ys you build, that would pretty much only build 1 single Cybertruck. And the Model S and X require 100 kilowatt hour battery packs. Cybertruck, I think, is going to require at least 120 kilowatt hours. And if you're under the belief that Tesla won't compromise on range, and they absolutely will do a 400 or 500 mile range variant, there's no question, in that case, it's going to be more like 150 or 180 kilowatt hours per truck. And that means the production ramp is going to take even longer. And if you're that finite on supply and demand is as high as it is already, my point is, even if you're right and Tesla says, you know what, Elon wants it to be 500 miles, we're going to make it 500 miles, no exceptions, then they could easily justify $150,000 or $200,000 because almost no other other electric vehicle other than like the Lucid Air is going to be available with that kind of range, and the Lucid Air has a far more efficient powertrain. That's a super aerodynamic, super small luxury sedan. A giant pickup truck like this, that's going to require a way bigger battery pack, which is going to take way longer to scale up, and because there's so much demand for it, they would charge an insane amount of money. So on the bright side, I think the pricing structure would actually be way worse if they ended up going with 400, 500 miles. And I'm sure many of you are wondering and asking yourselves, well, why did Tesla unveil the Cybertruck to have 500 miles of range for 70 grand if they couldn't deliver that? I personally think it was Elon being too optimistic on how quickly 4680s could ramp up. Back in 2019 when they unveiled it, they were not anticipating the same supply chain and inflation issues that we have today, and I also just think they weren't expecting the demand for the Model Y to be as high as it was. Once they started realizing how many orders were going to pour into this year, and once the demand backlog started to grow past the 1 year mark, they realized that, well, introducing like a 200 kilowatt hour Cybertruck right now is gonna slow down how many vehicles we can deliver, and 4680s are a very complicated battery manufacturing wise, and getting that manufacturing line right took longer than they expected, and the cost of building these batteries they thought would be a lot lower by 2021, and that just didn't end up happening. So I'm just trying to keep expectations realistic because I don't want disappointment. You know, I felt a lot of disappointment when I expected the 4680 Model Y to have over 400 miles of range, and then reality set in and it was like, actually this isn't that much cheaper and the range isn't that much better. But I realized why Tesla compromised on the range, and it was because they realized the true limiting factor with EV adoption was not range, it was production capacity, and I think Tesla's going to have that same approach and that same logic with the Cybertruck. Yes, in time I do believe they'll make higher range versions, but it's only going to be after they cater to the very large demographic of pickup truck buyers that are comfortable with 300 miles of range, not just because they can likely build those more profitably, but also because they can build them a lot faster, they require less cells in total. And yes, even if you're under the belief that there's no demand for a $100,000 Cybertruck with 300 miles of range, Tesla would lower the price accordingly and even sell the Cybertruck at a loss. They've done that in the past, and with the high margin revenue that they're bringing in from the sexy lineup already, they could easily, comfortably be losing money on every single Cybertruck sold, and the company would still be profitable, because the first year or two of Cybertruck production is probably going to be pretty low, considering it's going to require more energy and more batteries than any other vehicle they've ramped before, and because it's such a new design with the exoskeleton, the armored glass, the rear wheel steering, I don't expect this to ramp up to 250,000 units a year within the first 12 months because of all of those new manufacturing techniques and all of the batteries it requires. So yeah, if you're honestly interested in the Cybertruck because you want it to be more affordable, I would say hope that there's a massive demand loss and hope that there's a bunch of people that cancel, because that would actually motivate Tesla to lower prices. But I'm convinced, based on the tremendous backlog that Rivian, Ford, and Tesla are all seeing, there won't be a lack of demand. I know that a lot of people in the comments keep assuming year after year after year, no, this year they're gonna run out of demand, people aren't gonna buy them anymore, they're gonna have to try harder, the competition is coming, and every year, the competition gets here, but doesn't produce at meaningful volume, and Tesla raises prices, and demand still grows. That's the reality of the situation. There's a lot of speculation and guessing that this demand is suddenly gonna drop off eventually. I've yet to see it happen, though, so I'm just gonna keep assuming it's not coming until I actually see evidence of that happening, but so far, no data to really back up those claims that I can see. I hope that gave you guys some perspective for some of you wondering, like, what's gonna happen to all this demand if the price is too high, no one's gonna buy it. It's like, yeah, I think you're not looking at the reality of pickup truck sales and especially electric vehicle sales. So I want to just say thank you once again to everyone on Patreon supporting this channel. It seriously helps us out a ton, as does watching these videos. I look forward to making more for you. Take care. Have an excellent rest of your day.